So there's this long-standing idea of the lofty, sage, wise instructor bestowing their knowledge, imparting their knowledge onto their students. And the more we've learned about teaching and learning effectively, the more we've learned that the more you can engage your students in their own learning process, the more that increases engagement and motivation out of your students. And the more engaged and motivated your students are, the better they are to learn. And one of the ways to break down some of those barriers, make it more on equal footing, is by humanizing your learning. And one of the biggest ways to do that is by personalizing your classroom as much as possible. And I'm using classroom in a very general sort of way, whether you're talking about online or if you're talking in person. And there are some things to keep in mind about that. I mean, there might be some topics that might feel easier to make personal than others. A STEM topic might feel harder to make personal than a humanities topic. But also, there are some things that are just not ever appropriate to share with your students, so you are going to want to establish some sort of boundaries, and those might be those general levels about what's appropriate and not appropriate to share with your students, but also you might have your own personal feelings about what's too private for you to share with your own students. And so it's not a one-size-fits-all thing. There's a spectrum of what you can do. And like I mentioned, while you can do things like connecting the topics to your own life, you can add in some things as well. You could add an introductory discussion board where folks introduce one another. You could do weekly check-ins or icebreakers. You could also just find ways either in the classroom, the physical classroom, or in the learning management system of just adding your own personal flair here and there, where maybe it's adding a photo of your dog or your hobby or your children or whatever you feel comfortable sharing. When you personalize your classroom, you are showing your students that you are a three-dimensional human being, that you aren't this lofty instructor. And so why would you want to do that? Well, one thing is, often when your students feel more engaged with you, they might have a little bit more motivation to be successful. But they also might feel more comfortable coming to you and sharing with you when things aren't going well with them. Whatever has come up in their life. I talk a lot about mental illness, so it could be if they are dealing with very acute symptoms from there, but also just anything in life. The more that you personalize it, they might be more willing to come to you and share things with you, and then that might help with their retention and their ability to be successful in the classroom. I know for me, at one point my instructor shared her screen and I could see all her bookmarks, and she had all of these yoga bookmarks, and I was just getting into yoga, and so that was a really easy way for me to learn something about her and feel a little bit more connected and invested in her. And she's still to this day is one of my favorite professors I've ever had. So that was totally unintentional. The other thing to consider is, I guess we're just a really narcissistic species, but the more that we're able to relate our learning to our own lives, we tend to learn better. And so if you are able to personalize your topics and make them relevant to your own life, when you do that, you could inadvertently also be personalizing your learning for your students themselves. They might be able to relate to your own story and then connect the learning to their own lives. So that's pretty cool. Also, just, sometimes when you can personalize learning, you might just find that you're a little bit more passionate about the topic. Going back to how we're maybe a little narcissistic, sometimes when it's something that not only do we understand academically, but when we also have some sort of personal connection, it can come off as a little bit more lively and a little bit less stiff. So it can just be another way to be a little bit more engaging. And you don't have to share just things about topics. You could talk about your own experience as a student, what helped you when you were learning. And this could be including resources that you used, or just techniques that you tried. But also, I talk a lot about mental illness, and if you do feel comfortable sharing and you have a mental illness diagnosis, you could share that with your students. And sometimes having that more personal connection, it's not just, this, it's advice from someone who's actually been there, who's actually gone through it. Sometimes that makes your students feel a little bit more connected and a little bit more willing to take on the advice, because it's not someone just talking about it in theory, it's someone who's actually gone out and used it. And that's part of what I do in my own work, is because while I do talk a lot about it from a professional level, I'm also talking about it from a personal level as well. And the more that you're able to just make things more personal, make things not just in this very academic way, your students will be more engaged, they'll be more likely to reach out to you for support, and their learning will just increase.